Hey, 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 visionaries. This is Shalita, the nonprofit Easter O'Neill. And y'all know my mission is to help community organizers, business owners to launch and revitalize nonprofits that will rebuild their communities. We're back. Welcome back. Thanks for coming back. Today's hashtag nonprofit no filter live discussion is going to be on establishing partnerships and contracts with state and government entities. And I cannot wait for y'all to meet my mentor, as well as the director of DC Child and Family Services, Brenda Donald. She's going to be joining us in a little bit, but I wanted to do something a little bit different today because y'all know I'm extra. And it's all right. I'm trying to give you all the information you need. So come on through, right? Because y'all know I'm going to be looking at the comments. Let me know who's watching, who's looking. What you thinking today? What you wanting to get out of today's session or interview? Just drop a note, and I'll make sure that Director Donald sees it as well if you have messages for her or questions for her when she comes on. But initially, what I wanted to go over is how do you diversify your nonprofit income? And y'all know I have been in the nonprofit sphere for a while, and I've gotten all kinds of different types of funding. And I've also made a lot of mistakes as it pertains to messaging and talking to those different revenue streams or different funders or donors, right? So I want to come on and let you know some things like how are you going to, or how do you need to speak to different types of donors in order to, one, get your point across, or at least share what it is that your organization does and the work that you're trying to do in a way that they can hear it, right? And so that you're not always dependent on one type of funding. So Director Donald, when she comes on later on, she's going to be telling you specifically about the state and local governments or agencies, because she has worked in a myriad of different agencies and larger organizations. And so she can really speak to firsthand as someone who's looking for partnerships or who, decides who she partners with. And I want to also go over, start from individual donors, because those, honestly, when you're talking about those who are donating to your organization, it is the majority of funds that come into organizations are from individuals. So we really have to learn how to cultivate those relationships with our individual donors as well. So I wanted to share a document with you that's going to walk us through the different types of funding streams. And if you have any questions as I'm going through it, y'all know this is a conversation. I'm not I could be a little bougie, but that's not how this is not this place. Okay. Y'all come on here. And if you have something to say, I'm going to go ahead and address it if you have any questions or anything like that, because the whole purpose of me coming on and doing this show is to help give you information that you can actually use from someone who's actually used it successfully. Okay, cool. Oh, okay. Look at my boo. Okay, Angelique. Ange. She said, hi, Lita. I'm new to the nonprofit world, so this is timely for me. Alliance for the Great Lakes. Shout out. I'm so proud of you, Ange. Like you're just so amazing. Yes, I'm gonna put I just want everybody to see, look, hey, boo, that's my boo. Yes, so make sure that you ask some questions, okay? Any questions, even if it's y'all know, towards the end, if there's questions, even if it's not relevant to the topic that we're talking about today, just ask it, because I feel like everything aligns. So I'm gonna share my screen. So this is the first time I'm doing this, y'all. So some patience. Here, boom. Okay, so when it comes to messaging, y'all, first off, I'm automatically assuming, because all of my clients, when we work together, we make sure that we work on their messaging, their mission, their vision, their goals, their programming, their outcomes. Make sure you know what your budget is. Make sure, when I talk about outcomes, I'm talking about measures of success. What kind of information are you collecting to be able to share with other people or tell a story about the work that you're doing? You have to have that first. Before you start reaching out to people to get them to help you, you have to know what you need help with. Okay. And if you're at a point where you're not quite sure what that looks like, you need to reach out to me and one-on-one so that I can coach you through what that looks like. I've got everything you need, templates and everything. All right. So, and I'll make sure I'll share how you can do that in a second. But let's assume all of that is done. So first and foremost, I always talk about the board members. I say it ad nauseum. I know you get tired of hearing it, of me saying it, but you need to make sure that your board members are effective, they are active, and they are networked and are willing to share their networks with you and to move the mission of the organization forward. So people hear different ways. So I am, when it's, you've heard left brain, right brain, right? You know, right brain folks, just passionate, just, lead with the heart and then ask questions later. That's me, even though, I still ask the questions. But if I can connect with you, on a heart level and you speak to my heart, and then also the statistics and data and everything like that also lines up, you got me, right? But then you have left brain individuals who they don't lead with their heart. You need to talk to them as far as statistics are concerned, or why should they care? So you need to be able to talk to both types of people, right? And of course, and there's people that are both kind, but you just need to know that people hear differently. So with board members, of course, that's a personal connection. That's people are wanting to help you or be drawn to you because of the work or because of the interest in the individuals or the population that you serve. They either can relate personally to the population that you're serving, because maybe at one point, let's say you're working with homeless individuals, maybe at one point they were homeless, maybe at one point somebody that they love or very close to was homeless. And so it's when you're connecting with them, you're talking to them about your story, right? Why you started the organization, or why you joined the organization, why you're leading the organization. And you also talk about in the broader scope of what you're doing in the community and how you want to change things. So that's, that's a personal connection. And your board members, or people will say, well, I want to apply for this traditional grant or this proposal here. They put a request for proposal out here, but then they say I have to be around for 3 years. How do I even get the money to do the work to be around for 3 years? I'm about to tell you, you got to crawl before you walk. Okay. And this is crawling before you walk. You start with your board members, because your board members know someone who knows someone who knows someone, right? Who, if you look at the next step, is maybe a part of a private foundation, which typically can be family foundations. It doesn't necessarily always have to be family foundations, but the ones that I have experience with, private family foundations, where the executive director is a family member and they take information back to the board, which is also a collective of board or family members. So these people don't typically you can't go to big events and they're out there like, hey, how you doing? I'm with the so-and-so family foundation. Come on and get my card. No, it doesn't work that way. Typically, they're very reserved or to themselves. And if they do go to events like that, you will not know that they're part of a family foundation or a philanthropist, an individual that has a lot of money that wants to give. They're observing and looking and seeing, how are you presenting yourself, or, if it's a good connection, period. But these individuals, typically you will meet them through warm introductions of people who know of them or know them. So that's why I say it's so important for your board members, first and foremost, for you to have a vetting process, be clear about what you want in your board or the people that you want on your board, their characteristics and their expertise, because they're going to introduce you, or their networks are going to introduce you to the private foundations. Now, private foundations, there's a personal connection there. Yes, because it's smaller, it's less red tape, less bureaucracy. Yes, they do still have focus areas. So you need to be clear about, am I doing housing, employment, career development, workforce development, the environment, agriculture? What is your focus or your areas of focus? And don't pigeonhole yourself based off of the population you work with. Because moving on to the traditional foundations, they are less about the population you serve and more about what you're doing with that population. So you could be working with veterans, you could be working with the elderly, you could be working with young people. But if you are providing housing to any of those populations and they fund housing initiatives, then that still pertains to you, right? Get it? So it's not about, if the proposal or the RFP doesn't say that doesn't say foster youth, then I can't apply. No, you can apply to different people for different pieces of your work if you actually know what your areas of focus are. And not to say, and even going back to the private foundations, not to say that there is no personal connection. Like this thing is all about relationships, everything. It's all about relationships. We are human beings first. And so even when there's situations where there's maybe a little bit more structure in place at the foundations, if they have 3 proposals in front of them, all proposing to do the same thing for the same amount of money, and they can only fund one, and one of those proposals, they are familiar with the organization, or a grantee of theirs is familiar with the organization, more than likely the one that they're familiar with is going to get the funding, right? More than likely. I'm not saying that that's the case all the time. So when we're talking about the private or the personal connections, you have a little bit more room with private foundations for that sort of, find out, what do their kids do? Like, oh, their kids going away to college, or what are they interested in? This, and be authentic about this. Y'all, ain't nobody phony over here. Be authentic about it. But it's about developing a relationship. It's not a one-way thing. It's not all about you all the time and you, oh, give me some money, give me some money. No, when you authentically take a step back and you say, look, I know what I have to offer is of value, and I know that this individual or this entity can benefit from what I have to offer. All right, then you move forward with, okay, well, let me find out, what do they care about? What do they care about? And how can I fill a need, or how can we partner? Because that's another thing too about your confidence. When you come into the room or you are reaching out to a potential funder, you have to also know that what you have to offer is important, and that you are proposing a partnership, and not, oh, well, I don't want to ask for that, or I don't want to, that's too much, or no, ask for what you want. Okay. So personal connection with a private foundation, you have a little bit more room there. Like I said, it's a little bit less stringent, less bureaucracy, or less, structure as it pertains to all the different layers of things that you might have to do. And then the traditional foundations, less of a personal connection. Not to say that you can't have a respect or personal relationship. When I mean, professional, but when I say personal, they actually care about you as an individual too, because people don't fund organizations, they fund people. So, being clear about that, but there's more structure put in place. There's more levels that goes into it. You can have a grant manager who really cares about what you're doing, and they're going to advocate for you to the board, right? Who ultimately, the board of a traditional foundation, who ultimately makes the decisions. But if the board doesn't, for whatever reason, either they have surpassed or met the amount that they want to give out for your specific type of proposal, or whatever the case is, if they decide they don't want to fund it, the grant manager who oversees that funding portfolio can't do anything about it, right? So even though they may really like you and they may really support you, at the end of the day, if above their head, it's above their head. And so that's why I say there's an opportunity for a personal connection there, but there's some limitations with that. It's not necessarily an emotional thing either, because of that process that I told you about. And then there, again, interest in areas of focus. So being very clear about that. And they are also very interested in your outcomes and your measures of success. Now, you have your own measures of success internally that as the person running the nonprofit organization, that is important, right? And because you started working with this population, or wanting to work with this sector, right, of the community for a reason, and what works and what doesn't work. And sometimes the funders, many times, can be far removed from that. So you have a level of expertise, right, that what works and what doesn't. But at the same time, so internally, that, okay, you want to increase high school graduation numbers. You want to decrease numbers of homeless youth in your community. You want to, what you want to do. And that success is evidenced by high school graduation, or, the numbers of young people that you work with who tell you that they are feeling more better about their situation, or so this is information that you're collecting internally to inform your work. But you also need to be able to report on measures of success that the funders want to see. And they'll tell you what that is in the proposal or the request for proposals, right? The application. They'll tell you what the questions they want answers to. And once you are awarded, and if you are awarded the funding, they'll also tell you what they want you to report on. So you have to have some sort of internal process by which you are collecting data and information that you can share, with the funders and just with people in general, with your board members, with your clients, with everyone, right? So you need to make sure you have that. Now, once you get to this point, you've been implementing your programs. You have secured the funding to be able to have data and information to show that your work actually is having some sort of impact, right? Because impact, it takes a while over time to be able to see if things have changed because of you, right? Or because of something else in the community. But you, by this time, for those who are like, wow, how do I even get the money to be able to be eligible, to stay around long enough to be eligible for any of these other grants, or to be able to have financial statements that they're requesting me to have? I'm telling you, I hope you're listening. Okay. So once you get to this point, now we're talking about fee for service or subcontract. There are other nonprofit organizations that get money to do different things that they may not be able to do in-house, that it's an opportunity for you to come in and partner and provide some of the services that they might need. For instance, let's say they work with young people in foster care and they need a mental health component and they don't have it. Or maybe they need a life skills curriculum that they don't have, and they don't have the time to build. They want to look, and they don't want to reinvent the wheel. So they want a community partner or someone from the community that can come in and provide certain services. So let's say you have a life skills curriculum that you develop for your population that is around mental health. And let's just say through these different layers, you've also been at the table in the community. You've been a part of work groups. You've been a part of convenings. People know who you are. You can't just show up on the scene with a new nonprofit organization and expect people to collaborate with you or to vouch for you when it comes time for funding, or that want to partner with you or bring you in for a contract when they don't know who you are. So hopefully you're doing your research, you're doing the work of first building up those relationships and those collaborations. And then, folks are like, okay, well, I know that this person has an organization that can help me. I'm gonna reach out. Or you and your board members should always be looking at who in the community is getting the money. Where the money at? Follow the money. You can find that out because you can look at guidestar.org and look at people's 990s and see who they're funding, and some of the foundations, the larger foundations that are giving out money, they will list who they've given money to. They will list how much they've given out. So guidestar.org, make sure you're using your resources and you're doing your research. And if you are in the community already collaborating and people know who you are, then you already know who's getting funding. So if you don't need to be discouraged around, oh, well, I didn't get that funding, or I didn't get that grant. If you know an organization that did, you need to be reaching out to say, well, how can I support you? And then you have a fee associated with your training or with your services that you provide to them, right? Or you can also do subcontracts with state agencies. I'm going to let Director Donald tell you more about that when she joins us. But there's also that opportunity where there could be, so for instance, my first organization, we partnered with the Department of Health, and they were delivering a life skills or a health curriculum to young adults in foster care. But foster care was outside of their purview. They didn't know where the foster youth were, or necessarily, have time to go and find where they were or connect with the organizations or the agencies that were already working with them. They didn't have time to do all of that. And they partnered with my organization to come in and help them deliver the training and identify the foster youth. So that we were the subcontractors in that agreement, right? And it wasn't just because out of the blue, I was like, hey, let me do that for you. No, I knew the director and had been at the table with her around other initiatives, been in the room. And also when they ask in the community, which is another thing I want you to know, is that funders talk to each other. So they talk to each other, they talk to their grantees. I've had so many funders that have come to me and have said, well, you know what, I'm getting a proposal. I got a proposal in from this organization that says they help foster youth. Do you know of them? What do you think of them? Right. And so I've had the ability to be like, and all the time, it's been an organization that I have known of, or that I'm like, you should give them a shot. Like you should support them in some way. Right. But the point is, they came to me as their grantee to ask me what I thought. So if I didn't know this person, or I knew that this person had ulterior motives, or this organization was not really going to benefit the population, I would have been honest and I would have said that. So that is why it's important for you to make sure that you're connected in the community. Okay, to have these opportunities. Now, with the fee for service subcontract, this is strictly professional. Again, I know, like I said, we're human, and at the end of the day, folks will still be able to, well, if they know of you and they trust you, they respect you, and you have a proven track record and you follow through, they're always, at the end of the day, they're going to pull you into different opportunities. But this is more about how can you help them meet a need? They're looking at your outcomes. They have a responsibility or reporting requirement for something that they're supposed to be doing. So it's not so much about, oh, well, I really like you and I want you to come in and do this work for us. No, you got to be able to deliver the goods. And by this time, if you follow steps 1, or be mindful of the different funding streams here that we're talking about, and you get up to this point, then people already know that you are about your business and that you're actually about impact and not necessarily around to just try to get money to do things that you're not quite informed of how to do. Okay, so I'm gonna stop there. Anybody have any questions? So Chelsea, I'm gonna put this up here. Let me see. So can any of these principles be applied outside of the U.S.? Currently run a nonprofit in the Caribbean. So, Chelsea, what I would say is, even though I'm not quite sure how funding or donors are organized or structured in the Caribbean, the method behind this is basic human psychology, right? And how, when we're talking about relationship development and speaking to people in the way that they hear, it doesn't matter what country you're in. This is really important. And then you have international organizations or international funders that will fund, across countries, but they're still thinking about this. They still want to be engaged in a similar way. They still you need to be thoughtful around when you do your research to see, okay, here are my areas of focus, and you look at what are the other organizations that give to my areas of focus, and you find them, then you do research on them and see how they want to be interacted with, or who is the grant manager, or who is the contact person, and you don't feel bad about reaching out to them to ask for a meeting or a virtual meeting at this point. Okay. And this is universal. People are people, right? But as far as the structure and their requirements, the foundation or large foundations requirements, or the government agencies, their requirements, I'm not sure. I can't speak to that. So I hope that was helpful, Chelsea. And then Tamika, yes, GuideStar. So guidestar.org. is the website, and you of course you have to know the name of the organization. So for instance, if you're going in to talk to, let's say you've gotten approved, or not approved, but invited to come to a virtual meeting, or informational interview, I call it, with funders, just to learn more about what their focus is and to share more about what you're doing in hopes of putting a face to a name. You want to make sure you looked at guidestar.org to see what their budget is and see who they've given funding to and the amount that they typically like to give out. Because in addition to just openly asking, well, how much do you typically fund? And, and what's the range or whatever, typically that information will already have been, public on their website and things like that. But if not, you can go to guidestar.org and see what the range is, so that when you do meet or when you do apply for funding, you're not asking for something that's outside of how much they typically give. So there's that, but you should also use GuideStar if there's an organization that you want to partner with in the community that you may not, be too familiar with. You can look and see, if they're in compliance, and then see what their budget looks like, especially if it's a fee for service situation. And they're like, I want you to come in and provide something, provide a life skills workshop or provide some type of service to my population. You can look and see how much they typically have or how much they typically get in revenue, because I've had some people that will be like, well, I can only give you $100 per workshop, and I go and they're like a $20 million organization. I'm like, absolutely not. You're gonna have to do better than that. So, just use it. You can use it for those purposes. Awesome. So any other questions? Any other? All right, y'all. I know y'all looking, right? We're talking about money here. We're talking about funding. Before Director Donald joins us, which should be in the next few minutes, what questions do you have around funding and diversifying your funding? Ange, did you have any questions around, because you said you're new to the nonprofit world? Okay, so I'm looking in the what they call it, the green room. And I see that Director Donald has joined us. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her on in a second. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because she's going to go over the state and the government entities. And I can't wait. Okay, hold up, guys. Did I stop sharing my screen? Okay, hold on. Okay. So now, and I want to make sure that I bring everything up. This is my mentor. Hold up. Hey.
Hi there.
Hey, Director Donald, or my Brenda, but y'all can't call her that. Only I can call her that. Okay. Just so we know. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Who can say no to Shalita O'Neill? This is the problem.
I hope nobody. But people do. But I'm glad that you've come on, because you mean so much to me. She has been a mentor to me for over 10 years. My first nonprofit that I've been talking to you all about, all the lessons that I've learned and things like that. She was one of the first people to invest in me and to encourage me to do it. And, her heart for youth in foster care and just youth in general and families in general is amazing. And, across over the years, whenever I've needed some honest feedback, she's giving it to me. And so when I thought of, I working with nonprofit clients and nonprofit visionaries who are like, I want to, I need funding. How do I partner with the state? How do I, and there's a lot of things that they should know, but I'm like, well, who better to learn from than you? So I'm glad you're here. And I just want to read a little bit about on your bio. So I'm gonna read this because I want to get it right. All right. Just so y'all watch, know who you're talking to and who is here before you. So Ms. Donald has over 25 years of senior management expertise or experience in the public and nonprofit sectors. Before rejoining Child and Family Services, she was DC Child and Family Services. She was vice president of the Center for Effective Family Services and Systems at the Annie E. Casey Foundation, the nation's largest organization solely dedicated to improving the lives of vulnerable children and families. She returned to DC Child and Family Services Agency as its director in January 2017. But previously, Director Donald served as the deputy mayor for Health and Human Services for the District of Columbia, beginning in January 2015. And most recently, before that, served as both deputy mayor, get it right, deputy mayor for Health and Human Services and the interim director of CFSA under Mayor Bowser since October 2016. So she's also served as a secretary of the Maryland Department of Human Services from 2007 to 2010. And she has been recognized in numerous ways by way of honors, awards for her work in the community over the years. So I'm going to stop talking. Yes. And I want you to tell us more about your role, more about what does DC Child and Family Services do in the community?
Great. Well, thanks again for having me. And, I'm one of your biggest fans.
Thank you.
And for your listeners, viewers to understand why we became acquainted was because of what you brought to the table. And I think this is really important to understand when you're looking to partner with the government. Many people think, oh, it's about who I know and someone's going to give me a contract. No, it really is about satisfying a need, and it's about bringing something to the table. When those two things come together, there's magic. It doesn't always happen in a seamless way, and that's where a lot of the government bureaucratic stuff gets in the way, and I do want to talk about that. But I was, as Secretary of the Maryland Department of Human Services at the time, we were trying to figure out how to improve our group home services, that some of our kids in foster care who are not able to either be with family or to be in family foster homes for periods of time, a group home experience may have been the best thing for them. And Shalita herself brought her own experiences with how that worked for her and when it didn't work. And she had a couple of other friends and partners who had been through the experience. And so here I'm leading this group with a bunch of legislators to figure out how to change the laws and really to make this state agency more accountable to the people it serves, who are our young people. And we didn't have the voices of those who had experienced themselves. So Shalita is a big advocate. And she was like, wait a minute, you need to pay attention, you need to hear from us, and which was right. And so we had task force meetings, and they would come to the meetings. And then I looked around the table one time and I said, you know what? Everybody around here is getting paid to bring their voice into this conversation and to help shape this legislation. But not Shalita and her partners. They weren't. And I said, you've got to value yourself because you're contributing just as much. So that was the first thing where I said, I got to figure out a way to help get them paid. And so I structured a small discretionary contract or grant and said, basically, you're providing technical assistance and we need that. Now, that some of it was just pure luck. Some of it was the type of person that I am in the running agencies, but it really was the value added of those voices. And so we connected, from that point forward. And then, as Shalita said, from time to time, we'll touch bases. And if she's got a new idea, and I would tell her, okay, slow down. Right? We even talked about this the other day. But that, really think about where you're going and that every opportunity may not be opportune. In other words, it may not be the right time to do something. It may be the right thing to do, but you really should have a vision and agenda and not be driven by the funding. Now, excuse me, that's something that's easy to say, right? Because people are always looking for, where can I get a grant? Or how can I get a contract? And then you'll see something, you say, well, that's kind of close to what we're doing, and maybe we can adjust and stretch. And sometimes that does make sense, but it really has to fit in with your overall vision and your overall mission. And then it makes sense for you to think about, is that something that we should pursue?
Because that sounds like if it's not, then that's mission creep. So in right. The desperation of trying to find money, folks will be like, well, I can do that. I'll figure out how to do that.
Right.
So don't do that, because then you end up not really doing or having the impact that you truly want to have for the people that you serve.
Exactly. Because then you're existing to satisfy a funder. And trust me, with every dollar that comes from the government, whether it's this federal government, the state government, or local, there are requirements, and there are a lot of so government is designed. We have our mandates, but we're also where we operate within a set of bureaucratic rules, typically to make sure that we're spending the public dollars in a transparent and honest way. And so sometimes those to satisfy that to either auditors or legislators or the media, whatever, you really have a lot of things that have to be done in terms of reporting, in terms of, competing for grants or contracts. And to say I can learn and do that, you can't, this is not really a learn on the job kind of thing when you're running a business, right? It really isn't. So, but there are strategies, right, Shalita, for figuring that out. So I just want to say a couple things. One is that for the most part, if you're going after government contracts, you are going to have to compete. That means there's a proposal, a response to a proposal, or that it's very seldom that you're going to be in a unique position to get a sole source contract. It almost doesn't work.
What that is? What is a sole source?
So contract? Sole source contract is if I say I've got $10,000 and I want to buy these services, and I'm like, who do I know that can provide those services? And then I go and say, I'm going to give this to this particular organization. Well, in order to do that from the government standpoint, I have to, number one, I have to make sure that those services can only be provided by that particular organization. So I'll go back to when Shalita and I first met and I was able to bring her in. We didn't have very many, and probably none in the state of Maryland. I think it was our own organization that was made up of former foster youth who were advocating for better conditions for the child welfare system. So that would say we could go for a sole source because there was no competition. But typically, there are others who can do the work. Maybe they can't do it as well as you can, and that's where you have to make the case with your proposal when you're submitting, for as part of a competitive selection process. And that is more typical how it works. And certainly, the more money that's involved, the more competition that's required. Because these are safeguards. Again, I will be spending the public dollars, which are your dollars, because people are paying taxes. And then I need to have a high level of responsibility and of that meets legal requirements so that I'm not just giving money to friends. And then I'll say that other thing too. Some people think that I don't look to give money to friends because friends might not be able to do the job.
Right. Hey, look.
And then I'm in trouble because I picked somebody out and made a case that they're the ones who should get this particular contract or grant, and then made the case that they're the only ones who can do it. And then if they can't do it, then we're both sunk. And then it's your reputation as a business, it's my reputation as a public official. And then next time around, who are you? I'm not going to recommend you. Let's say we get through this project. I'm going to be like, it's just like hiring somebody, right? If you can't do the job, then you're not going to get other work. And that's the other thing, is that your reputation, your credibility, and you do usually have to start small. I know all of us want to jump to the top. I didn't jump to the top. Shalita said 25 years. It's really more than that, but then I make myself of all the experience that it took to get to the top. And I did the same thing with a business. You've got to have, your own expertise, of course, your passion and your mission. And then you got to have some experience.
Absolutely.
And then people often ask, well, so how do you get the experience if I'm just kind of starting out, right?
I was gonna say that.
Right? And it's true. It's true. It's a really good point. And there are some strategies that work. And I've done this a lot in my career, and it's called building capacity and partnering. So if you are a smaller or a new organization and you really want to get that foot in the door so that you can demonstrate that I can do this, I can make this contribution, well, partner with someone else. Partner with an organization that has a longer history or a larger organization, or carve out a slice of the work that, say, you can do that benefits the larger organization. Then you start building your business resume. And they say, oh, the first time I came in as a junior partner with this other organization, and I showed that I could do, and you do your slice of the work, and then the next time, and it may not be the next time, it may be the next time after that, but it might be the next time, then you can say, now I have a track record, you've built relationships, you've delivered in ways that people can quantify, and then they start looking to you.
Absolutely. And you said something there too, like, don't give up if you get a no the first time.
Oh, yeah.
That it's a no forever. I've had to apply 4 and 5 times for different grants, and I got it the 5th time. Right. But if I would have stopped previously, then I would have never gotten the opportunity. So don't, get
it's true. But here's another thing. If you don't get it, in most organizations, government agencies will have a process where they will debrief with you on why you weren't selected. Everybody doesn't know that. And so if we have multiple bidders who apply, and then, through a competitive process, we select someone and someone doesn't get selected, you can, I would say, raise your hand. You can say, what is it about my proposal that made me less competitive? What can I do next time that would make my chances of winning better? And that's real important information. And every place I've ever worked, we have always been very clear about doing that. Sometimes it's a flaw in the proposal itself, if it's not well written, and certainly it's like your resume, right? You want to make sure you don't have any typos. You want to make sure that you're really communicating. But sometimes it's something real. I'm like, you know what? We really were looking for someone with more technical experience in this particular area. So, we need you to partner with another organization and build up that muscle within your organization. Another time it may be, well, we were looking for a team of people, and Shalita, you're awesome, but the team that you described was much more junior, right? So we'll give very specific feedback to you about what you can do next time or why you weren't successful this time. So yes, keep trying. Don't just say, oh God, I didn't get it, now I'm gonna pack up and go home. No, but really take advantage of the opportunity to find out why your particular your proposal didn't make it this time. And then next time you're able to say, well, I've made this adjustment, and then you're gonna be in a stronger position and for subsequent times.
Yes. And I will also, for those who don't even know, we say the request for proposals. So that's how you can find out if there's a need that you can apply for. How would they even be notified? What should they do?
Yeah, it can be tricky, right? So there are and now, of course, even 10 years ago, everything wasn't as readily available online, but certainly there are, and I don't know if you found this useful, Shalita, there's some services you can sign up for. Some of them are free, some of them you might have to pay a small amount, where you get notified about grant or contract opportunities. Like the federal government, depending on which agency, they all have that. And you go online, and let's just say the state government. I'm not sure what they're doing in Maryland now, but let's say you go online, you look up my agency. If we have any RFPs, requests for proposals, if we have anything that we're about to post, usually we'll say ahead of time that we're going to be looking for these services. But you would go on the district government website and you just look in, what are some upcoming grants in these particular areas. And certainly, like with any search, the more precise you can be about what you're looking for. If you're looking to do a housing program or job, employment services or whatever type, the more, you put in your search words, and it will give you the list of those that are coming up, when they're due. And the federal government is much better than I think even the local government at saying, they give what's called it's a notice of a funding. What is the A? It's always called announcement. Thank you. I was going to say opportunity.
So many
they will let you know. They'll say, here's something that's coming out. So say you have registered and said, I'm interested in these particular kinds of opportunities. It will say, here's what's coming up. And this one is going to be posted on October 1st, and it's going to be due on such and such. And so then you create an alert for that.
Mm-hmm.
So there are definitely ways to figure out what's coming up. I think where you would probably have the least success as a business is knocking on doors and saying, hey, I've got this wonderful service, and are you interested? And I want to get a contract. I mean, I know that everybody would be more sophisticated than that. But again, think about it like a job. Mm-hmm. So if someone is coming to me and say, I'm looking for a job, I tell them, I look at their resume, and then I say, go online and figure out what jobs we have available and which ones you match up with, and then come back. And then, if it's a personal thing, then I'm going to give you some coaching and some advice. I'm going to say, I don't think that one is you quite ready for that. But others say, you know what, this may be something that where you bring something to the table. So you can and should look for mentors in that way, where you have key folks within agencies, but you don't have to do that way. And it's not, there certainly is no more guarantee about being successful. It's just you're getting on people's radar screens so that they may.
Yeah. And doing your research, like do your research beforehand. It shouldn't be like, I want to meet with you and you have no idea what you want to meet about and what you should talk about. So do your research beforehand. And I know that, like you said earlier, what helped me too was being in the room when we were talking about like the different issues that matter to my organization or that matter to me, that ultimately had me to start my first nonprofit organization, is to get in there and be a part of the conversation. Yeah. But some people don't even know like how to do that, how to position themselves or be present or even get invited into rooms. Do you have any advice for them?
I do. So I think it's like, the good word that you used was investing. So you have to invest in yourself and in your organization. And that means that at first, you're probably going to be spending a lot of time that you're not getting paid for. Mm-hmm. So if your mission, if you got a mission, you got an area of focus, then you're going to figure out who are the people, what are they talking about? Who are the key influencers in this work? I mean, I don't know if you remember, but how did you find out we were even talking about the whole group home legislation reform? I just knew you showed up. What?
From other nonprofits, like, hey, you need to be here,
Right. You know what? It may have even been, I don't remember exactly. You may have testified at one of the hearings when the legislation was being proposed. And so that's another thing. You got to chase and see, and these are, you can find out free, like, what is the city council talking about? What is the county commission? What is the state? What are they talking about? And you'll be like, wow, I've got something to say. Mm-hmm. And then when you come, there was I'm pretty sure that's what happened. I noticed you before you noticed me. I was going to say that. And that's because you came and you spoke with an authentic voice, but you also had a very strong point of view that kind of, nothing for us without us kind of, that I'm like, absolutely, that really, really makes sense. And then you just kept showing up and you didn't know, and you weren't showing up because we didn't even know if there was any money available. Nope. It wasn't even about that. You were like, I have a stake in this, and we want to make sure that this legislation hears our voices and is done in the right way. And then it was just like, okay, well, they're going to keep showing up. We need to pay them because we're getting paid.
And that's the thing. Keep showing up.
Yes.
Even like, because a lot of times with folks, we get this one track mind around funding, money. And yes, you do need money to run the programs. But initially, the first year or two of launching your nonprofit, it's about developing those relationships and being present and being a part of the conversation, because you truly want to have an impact, because you truly want to be of value and be of a contribution, and everything else follows. I truly believe that.
Yeah. If you said another word, Shalita, that's important. So we said invest in yourself, but the other is to value yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think a lot of younger entrepreneurs and business leaders are like, well, okay, I'm not sure. And where they keep showing up. And at some point, you have to, even though you might have made a commitment, I'm going to start this business and I'm going to still work my other job. I'm going to work my day job, or I'm not going to get paid, or I'm going to, take a lesser salary. If you can afford to do it, and everybody can't.
Right.
And that's where you really look for some kind of capacity building grants and I've done that too for organizations where I'm like, no, we need to at least have someone who gets paid who is while they're pursuing this dream. And that's more luck. And that really is if you've got someone who's going to mentor you. Our mayor asked me to chair a task force 2 years ago now on missing and runaway youth, right? And so we want to find out, why do kids run? Why do they run? Are they running from? Or are they running to? And how do we figure that out? Because they would always come back, but there's a reason that if you're young, you don't want to be at home. And so let's try to figure that out. And we had this one guy who was part of the task force, who's a community advocate, and he started doing this work because his own sister had run away some years ago and had a bad outcome. But he was volunteering, and he would call the police anytime there was a missing child. He was out there. And I said, we got to figure out how to get him paid, how to help him with his organization. And he had a nonprofit, but he really wasn't getting any funding because it was a labor of love. But yet still, his time and his expertise and his commitment was so valuable, but he wasn't really valuing himself, or he just didn't think that he was entitled to get paid. So we created a little grant opportunity and said, no, if you're going to be part of this, we need to figure out a way to get somebody paid. So I think you gotta value yourself and say, if I'm bringing something to the table that's helping to address one of your needs, you mean me being government, then you should get paid. And that's, to me, a fairness and an equity conversation.
It's a win-win. I believe in win-wins. There is one in every situation. You just got to find it.
Yes.
Yes. So how about to those who, okay, let's say you get a contract or a partnership, state or government entity. How do you maintain it? What are some things that they need to make sure that they're doing in order to keep that relationship healthy?
Yep. Again, it's just think about it like a job. So most people have had jobs before they've had businesses. So that's why I put, even if you're working a, retail or fast food job, you show up, you deliver what you're expected to deliver. You make sure that you document your efforts. That means your reports, you're on time. And if you're struggling, then you raise your hand and you're like, wait a minute, I thought, because things happen.
Yeah.
Things happen. And sometimes, to have stretch goals. I have stepped into jobs where I'm like, I can do this, but I haven't done exactly this. But then you draw on and then you get in there and it's like, then something is not exactly. So you got it this sooner rather than later. So don't go down the road when it's time for us to talk about renewing for the next year, and you didn't do this report or this piece of the project, and I'm not paying attention because I'm doing 1,000 other things. So we stay in close communication. Usually you have a program person who is your point person. There's always a contract person who oversees, who kind of makes sure, checks all the boxes. That's the first thing. Make sure that you deliver. If you get in a position, let's say you're going to go for that big grant that is a little bit above you, but you think you can do it, build your own, network of folks to help you, whether you hire someone with more experience than you. And so what you may have to reduce a little bit about what goes in your own pocket because you got someone else, because that's part of that investment.
Contracting.
Right? Everybody's going to have a certain, some kind of board of directors. If you're a nonprofit, you have to. If you're an organization, a business organization, you might not, but you need to have your own kitchen cabinet, right? You need to have people you can go to who you trust and respect, who are there for you, who are going to give you good advice about how to kind of navigate, the system or figure out something. So don't struggle on your own, because then you'll drown if you can't swim.
You can't do it on your own.
Right.
Yeah, you can't do it. You can't be successful at it, at least not for a long term on your own.
Right.
So awesome. So I'm going to go over to the comments and see if we have any questions. So for those of you that are watching, if you have some questions for Director Donald, please make sure you put it in here so that I can ask her. I'm going over here and I see. Okay. Hey, Miss Marva. So this Miss Marva is my one of my clients. So she said, what can a new nonprofit offer to an established organization? Typically, they have what you need. Should you partner with them and use their staff? Then you are paying them, right?
Well, maybe and maybe not. Right. I think I'm a big fan of partnerships. And so I'm so excited. We've launched in this past year, we gave planning grants to 10 organizations in key neighborhoods in DC to establish what we're calling family success centers. Wow. And the grants themselves are relatively, they're like around $400,000 grants, which for some organizations that are small, that's huge. For some of our larger organizations, that's relatively small. But part of what we built into the model was that they must partner with smaller organizations in their community so that they can build their capacity. And I did a version of this about 5 years ago. And I'm so excited because one of the organizations that started like that actually now is the lead entity. So she was a mom and pop after school program in a public housing project, and the kids were coming to her. So it was like, voting with your feet. She was the voice in the community, the trusted face. And she really wasn't getting any money. So we gave a small grant to her through a larger organization. And we said, look, the whole goal is to partner and build this up. In 3 years, she had brought other partners to the table with small grants. And then all of a sudden, then that's not all of a sudden, because it's like over 3 years, then she becomes the lead entity. And they learned over that time how to document their success, how to quantify, because you have to quantify things. So you can't be scared of data. You got to know, if I'm giving you $10,000, what are you producing? How many families do you touch? What are the outcomes? So you have to establish that. And so now they're the lead grantee. And guess what? Now they're bringing smaller organizations from that community. Yep. So that's really, really important. And I think, and a lot of times the government will require that, because a lot of times we have requirements for small and local disadvantaged businesses to be part of it. So that's also an opportunity to partner with someone, because they do need you. So they may be a larger organization, but they can't get the contract if they don't bring someone with them. But I think it's better to have where you have those relationships and where everybody's coming together and saying, you know what, we're going to put in our respective strengths and then have a bigger
collaboration. And I hope people are truly getting that too from our conversation. And it's really about partnership and collaboration. You can't just come in and be a new nonprofit organization and just start applying for stuff and not talking to other people who've been on the ground doing the work for years, because then, not only can it help you identify what your niche is, because you want to fill a gap. You don't want to be right or do the same thing that somebody else is doing. But, people need support. All the need that's in the community, not one entity can fill it. There is a space for you, but you have to find where it is in collaboration. Okay, and so Angie Salazin said, what are some tips you have for young leaders of color climbing up the ladder while not compromising their core values?
Well, I think we touched on that a little bit earlier, and that's, stay true to your mission. You want to be opportunistic though, right? So if you have, you have to kind of have the broader vision for what will allow you to move in your particular arena. And so you don't want to stay in a little box, but you really want to understand and constantly check yourself on what is my mission and what are my core values that I'm not willing to compromise. And sometimes that means you're going to pass up on something. Like there are sometimes you say, you know what? I'm not going to work for that organization. I don't care how much money. I don't want to. I don't want to be a part of that because that is something that's important to me, or I don't like their policies and their values. Yeah, you may be giving up some things, but I think you're going to be able to sleep with yourself at night, and also you're standing up for something.
Yeah, she was saying while still distrusting things, like she finds it a challenge.
So that's we might want to have more of your conversation about that. I mean, I would say again, I've never owned a business, so I'm in a job and position kind of perspective. But I have worked for 4 mayors and 1 governor. I've been appointed, and I would never work for someone whose policies I didn't respect and whose values I couldn't embrace. And so I raise that question for some people now who are working at a certain level of government. And I'm like, and it doesn't mean it has to be someone in lockstep, but it's just got to be that I don't feel like I'm compromising. And that, yes, it does narrow you a little bit. And earlier career, you do some things that maybe later career, like I'm in a position to say, no, I wouldn't even consider that. But it's the right question to have, and I can tell Angelique that you are going to be true to your own values and your own principles, and that is going to, you will never be wrong in that situation. You make some trade-offs, but don't trade off that.
Your soul, don't trade your soul now.
No.
So if you can leave everyone with, what is a piece of advice to these, nonprofit, mostly grassroots organizations that are looking to partner with state entities, and you would say?
Yeah. So I think just to kind of recap, that you got to invest in yourself and your business. You've got to stay true to your own values, and then you've got to build relationships, and and that's part of that investment. So I guess, investment and values are 2 really important components.
And patience.
Patience, okay.
I had to learn. I was like, okay, because like you said, it's not just gonna happen.
Right.
You have to continue to show up, be patient with the process.
Yeah.
Know that you're having an impact.
Yeah. And so I've got to sign off because now my boss.
Oh, you go right ahead. I'll put up the website, so if people want to learn more about this CFSA, how they can actually, either maybe become a foster parent or volunteer, or if they're looking for contracts or whatever, like go to the website.
And if anybody, you can send them my email, and if they want to drop me a line, especially if anybody's who is in DC, who's working on the ground, I want to know who you are. All right.
Okay. I'll make sure I share it.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was my friend. To hiring documents, board member and board governance documents, program documents, you name it, I have it there in the nonprofit package. And it's part of the membership. So make sure you go and sign up as a member. If you're not feeling membership, you don't want to do a monthly thing, still still go on my website and explore. You can get access to all the books and plays through Trello for $37. So it's worth it. And they're all templates that I have personally used to raise opportunity for my organization. So everybody, for you, Sequoia, and for everybody else who's watching, make sure you go over to the website and you take a look at that. Become a member, because not only with the membership you get access to templates, but you also get access to my online courses that I have, Junior Nonprofit and Weekend and Senior Nonprofit for Success. You also are able to get free one-on-one coaching with me as part of the Build It membership. So go over there and see, what I have to offer. Also, if you thought that this is helpful, please subscribe, like, and share so that, other people can also get the same information. So, y'all, join me next week, September 15th, for our hashtag nonprofit and no filter discussion. We're going to be talking about nonprofit insurance. Why do you need it? What type of insurance do you need? And where to get it? And I'll be announcing our special guest later, so stay tuned for that. Until next time, y'all, what do I say? We're going to be real, we're going to have fun, and we're going to get results. So thanks for joining. Did it say? Oh, Patricia, you said you're missing what I'm saying? Oh, my sound? Is my sound going off? Y'all. Well, y'all know how to get me, okay? ShalitaO'Neal.com or drop me a comment and I'll respond. Thanks for joining.